Hey, Pusnet, new little series or videos on that series of nutrition series. So in this one, we'll be talking about burns and wounds. And so let's get going. So here we can see what a wound looks like when it's starting to get healed slowly. So over here you have the top of the skin, and that V shape here, that's your wound, and this whole red. Over here is what they call the epidermis, so one layer of your skin. This one is the dermis. It's where all the vascularization is. And so when we heal a wound, and we talk about that in previous videos, so I wanted to refresh memory a little bit. It's a little bit like a wall. So you need bricks, and you need things in between the bricks to rebuild the gap inside your wound. And so over here, when we talk about those bricks and stuff, what we'll need is amino acid to build what we need, and also the structure inside to make sure that those bricks holds together. And so the three main things that we need when it comes to wound related things is protein, vitamin C, vitamin A, and zinc. Protein will be mostly your bricks themselves, and the vitamin C, A, and zinc will play mostly on the inflammatory process and the stuff that holds the bricks in between. So as you can see here, it's all related by what you can get and not get, but we'll be spending mostly our time on the protein because that's the easiest one. The A and C, maybe the it's always better to have the natural part, so with like very good spinach, broccoli, and things like that. But supplements could be a requirement in a disaster situation because you do not have like nice strawberry or tomato juice and stuff. Zinc is very easy to get also as a supplement, and I recommend that one to have in any kit because also it's a good one for diarrhea, especially in kids. So on the physical exam, when you're going to check the person, so what you want to check is signs of catabolism. And so what a catabolism means, that basically our body is a little bit like a bank account. So you deposit stuff and you withdraw from it. Well, if you withdraw more than you deposit, then you'll be in the negative. And this is what catabolism means, that you don't bring enough protein and energy, that basically you're using most of your stuff for repairs. And so especially if you have a big wound and you need a lot of proteins and stuff, your body will be using that instead of rebuilding the rest of your body. So you need to look at sign for catabolism. And the dairy history. So is there any protein? What do you have in mind? Access to, and things like that. And you'll see in the wounds what it counts is the depth and the total body surface. And we'll be talking a little bit about that mostly in burns. But bigger they are, more you need of that stuff, basically. So we're not talking here wounds of like you cut your finger and suddenly you need to use a lot of protein, but we're talking like large wound, like 5 to 10% you're starting to need. So wounds that would need basically like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3, like even more, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of to heal. Those would be the ones that you're starting to think. But yeah, the one that you put a bandage, you leave it for 7 days, I don't think you need to change your diet for those. But when you start being above the 7 days and you need more stuff, then your diet becomes necessary so that you don't go into this catabolism. So for diet planning, what you need to consider is that is there any protein, energy, malnutrition, and we'll be talking that a little bit more down the series. But there's a syndrome called the refeeding syndrome, and so that could be a big thing, especially if the disaster lasts for a few months, where people are not able to eat very well. Well, you don't want to give them a lot of protein just like this, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that. And renal impairment. And why is there high protein is bad for renal people? Well, it has a lot of side effects, and the reason for that is that when we take proteins, it goes into, like here in that slide, amino acid pools, and then it being exchanged between the tissue and the tissue proteins, and the tissue protein sends back metabolism, because there's always so for everything we use, there's a metabolism that gets used. Like, it's not used 100%, so there's always bad stuff coming out of this, and we excrete that either by our stool or by our urine. A lot of the stuff that we're going to use here is our urine. And so what happened here in the NH4 is ammonia, and you have urea. And so what happened is that if people that don't have a good kidneys function, they won't be able to get rid of that stuff. And so if you add up too much to it, at one point it may rise into the bloodstream and get some complication. And when we talk about renal issue, yes, chronic people that are on dialysis, that could be a big issue. But don't forget that people with diabetes also, a lot of the time long-term diabetes, will have a bad renal function. But also people, let's say you have like ultra marathoner, there's a lot of studies that have shown that, but people that do a lot of exercise and don't drink very well or don't stay as hydrated as they should be, and then they start popping ibuprofen, it can affect your kidney function. So that could be a situation where somebody's been bugging out for a week, has this big backpack, it's heavy, it's stuff, he's got pain everywhere because he's carrying all that load, popping some ibuprofen and not able to hydrate himself, his kidney function could go down. And so if they come to your location or your community, they could have some wounds, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, we'll give you some protein. That could be an effect. So again, it's not about not giving it, but keeping this in mind, that it could affect the nitrogen balance. There's we talked about that before, but there's complete and incomplete protein, and what it's important also for wound is that it's not just about giving protein, but calories as well. So if I give like 100% protein but no calories, the body needs a little bit of everything to create those bricks, because in bricks, there's not just one material, there's a mix of material, just like cement, right? So what happened is that if you don't provide enough calories, the body will be using his other calories that are inside the rest of the body, and instead of repairing the tissue repair, will be mostly there, and then they'll start losing body, and then they'll run out of material. So make sure that you give calories with your protein, and that they're complete. We were talking about that, about the amino acids. So, and if you cannot, because you don't have like chicken or meat or whatever, you don't have the complete protein, if you give the plant protein, make sure that you have at least the essential amino acid in the same day. So that means like you mix it out, so you don't have to be on the same meal, but at least at the end of the day you have about the same, you have all the amino acid that you need. Protein supplement, they can come as a protein powder or leaking protein. So for example, Ensures could be a good one, milk powder. And I put power eggs here because they were mentioning that eggs is the best amino acid, complete amino acid. One of the issue again would be to have fresh eggs if the grid would go down, but I know there's a lot of product out there of dehydrated eggs, and my understanding is they have different qualities. Some are great, some are not that great. But I think there was one product that pretty much like the eggs are almost like perfect. So that could be a good way to put in your bag and to supplement somebody that has this. So mix those eggs with like a little bit of milk powder, and then suddenly now you have a lot of protein, and somebody that can eat with just dehydrated and a little bit of water and stuff like that. So if you cannot eat well, instead of eating like 3 meals a day, eat smaller meals. So again, it's at the end of the day, so it's about like if you judge that somebody needs a lot of protein on the 24-hour period, that's what counts. It's not so much like that one meal. If they were not able to eat a lot, well then if they can catch on 5 or 6, but at the end of the day they eat all the protein they need, then that would be quite enough. So let's talk about burns. And when we talk about body surface, so the percentage of total body surface, there's this concept in medicine called the rule of 9, and which is kind of interesting here because there's no 9%. But basically, everything on our body is kind of you can make like 9%. So it's either 9 for the arm and 18 for the body, I think, and things like that. But basically, when we fill that out, so if you have, for example, the forearm here and just the shoulder here would be about 1/4, let's say a quarter of this, so let's say 12 divided by 4, so another let's say 3%, 4% here, so that would be 6%. So basically you would have about burn this side would be about 6%. So this is how you calculate your body surface area. So you fill that out, you check how much, so out of your 30%, how much percentage is used, and so you add all those numbers up, and then you get your total burn. And so when we talk about total body surface area, that's what we talk about. So when we talk about TBSA, which total body surface area, burns that greater than 20%, that's when we're going to start thinking about all those things that we need. So for adults, we need 25 calories per kilogram plus 40 calories for each person of burn area. And for children, it's 1,800 calories plus 2,200 calories per meter of square of burn area. So again, it's all depending on your burns area. So it's a very important concept, because that's what you need to assess your burns and then provide those calories by gram. So again, we're talking about large burns, and the smaller burns you can treat it a little bit more like a wound. But when you're starting to talk about 15-20% burns, you're starting to talk about this, what you need a little bit more. Also, protein are destroy at 50% higher in burns. So the proteins needs are 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo. So again, you need the weight of the patient. There's a lot of stuff in burns that you need the surface, so you need to know how bad the burn is, and also the weight of the person, because you need to know how much they provide. And all the formulas are always on kilograms. So when you start talking about medical stuff, for all the people that are used to pounds, you still need to transfer it in kilograms. So in your medical book would be in your medical kit would be important to have either a conversion table of pounds to kilo, or the reverse, and to go back and forth like this, because the number that you're going to get, so for example 2 grams, so let's say I got a 60 kilo, so let's say a 95 kilo, which is about 230 pounds. So what I do is I do 2 times 90 kilo, so that gives 180. So I need an 180 gram of protein to give on a regular basis. The water loss as well can be as bad as 4 liters, and so that's a lot per meter per day. So you can lose a lot of water, so it's very important to hydrate them a lot too, and so by drinking. The problem with the patient with large burn, even if the burns is not on the stomach, because again that bank analogy where deposit versus taking money out, is that what happens is that in burns there's a lot of money out. Large burn, we're talking again, there's a lot of money coming out, and so it's hard to give them. And so what happened is that her stomach may not get as much circulation that we would like to, and so what can happen is that even if you try to feed them or hydrate them, their stomach may not be able to grasp as good as they would like to. So but it's important to feed them very early to prevent what we call the gut permeability. And basically what happened with gut permeability is that basically it opens up, and all the bacteria that we have in your guts goes into your bloodstream, and then basically now you can have increased bacteria load into you and have sepsis. So anyway, that was the video for this. If you have any question, put that down, and I'll talk to you soon.